Dude, did you just seriously run hardcore Nihlathak 1000 times? Yep. If you want some tips and tricks on how to run Nihlathak on hardcore, feel free to check out the video above, but in this video I want to pretty much focus only on the GG drops, what I got from doing exactly 1000 Nihlathak and Pindleskin runs. So with that said, of course at the end I'll talk about other stuff as well, but now let's just forget about that and jump right into the good stuff.
Warning, the following program may contain cringy jokes. Please proceed at your own risk. Please subscribe.
So, let's start the soundtrack and start the runs, and only 14 runs in I find my first good item, which is a 38% Geeds. I also find a couple more of them throughout the run, since they're not exactly, the craziest drops. I won't spend, extra time on displaying each of them independently. So yeah, there's that. Anyway, 34 runs in, I actually get a really GG item, which is from Pindleskin, and it's Talrash's armor. Next up, 5 runs later, so on run 39, I get from a random mob Lycander's aim. It's not exactly, the best of the best, but it's still a pretty cool item. 75 runs in, so for 45 runs, I exactly find just about nothing. Anyway, at the 75th run, I find Mavina's bow, again from a random mob. And only a couple of runs later, so at run 79, I find an awesome high rune, which is Vex, again from a, completely random mob. Next up is 20 runs later, I find a Stormlash from Pindleskin, which, it might not be a super GG item, but it's kind of hard to roll that, since you can also roll the horizons. Anyway, next run I find Guardian Angel from Nihlathak, and on run 98, so 6 runs later, I find my first item that I can cross off my Holy Grail list, which is Alder's armor. And surprisingly enough, I also find 3 more of them throughout the runs, one at 104, so only 6 runs later, another one at 622, and the 4th one at 691 runs in. Moving on, 40 runs later, I find a unique Balrog Spear. It's kind of a cool drop. And then about 10 runs later, I think my first unique amulet out of Nihlathak. It turns out to be Mahim's Oak, but I mean, it could have been something better. Anyway, a couple of runs later, I find a subscribe button. Yep, I'm shameless like that. I'm not even gonna apologize. I just did what I had to do. Anyway, 10 runs later, I drop a unique Phase Blade. Unfortunately, it's not Azurath, and it even couldn't have been Azurath due to the monster level that dropped it. A couple of runs later, I drop a set Giant Skull, which is Trangul's Helm. And like 20 runs later, I drop a unique Paladin Shield. It's like my third Alma Negra, and I still don't have the Herald of Zakrum, so that's pretty annoying. 10 runs later, I drop a Umrid. 20 runs later, I drop a Trangul's armor. It's not from Nihlathak actually, it's from a random mob. And then 6 runs later, I drop a Polrud. So 5 runs later, I drop my first Jade Talon. I also dropped a couple more of them through these runs, so one on 354th run, one on 592nd. Unfortunately, not one of them really rolled well. They were either lacking skills or enhanced damage or resistances, so kind of disappointed about that. Anyway, run 242, I drop a Widowmaker out of Nihlathak. And then 30 runs later, I cross off another item off my Holy Grail list, which is Natalia's Claw. So now I have the full Natalia set, pretty happy about it. We'll probably make a, full Natalia's Assassin at some point. 5 runs later, I drop another awesome item, which is Cerebus Bite. I only had one of it before and it was ethereal, so pretty happy about it, though the roll wasn't too good. Run 288, I drop a Lemrune, and 6 runs later, I drop Telrash's Mask. Not a great drop, but you know, it's still a decent one. Then on run 315, I drop Nihlathak. Anyway, run 337, I get a pretty damn awesome drop, which is a Rune out of a random mob, so I think this is probably so far my best drop. And only 20 runs later, actually another GG drop happens, which is a set amulet, and yeah, it's the freaking Telrash's amulet. So the good drops don't stop there. 50 runs later, I drop another pretty rare item. It's a unique barbarian helm, Wolf Howl. Not sure about the roll, but I think it's pretty hard to find anyway. And 7 runs later, I find Mavina's armor. Next drop happens from Pindleskin, 431 runs in. I drop my second pull rune from Pindleskin. And then 9 runs later, Nihlathak drops. I think I don't like you either, Nihlathak. Anyway, 20 runs later, I get a double Immortal King's weapon drop from Nihlathak, and I actually find a third Immortal King weapon later on in the run, so somewhere at 850 runs. And then around 10 runs later, I find an Ormus Dusk Shroud. Unfortunately, it doesn't roll too good, but I mean, Ormus is an Ormus. Anyway, 473 runs in, I find another unique amulet of Nihlathak. Unfortunately, it rolls again Mahim Oak. And 15 runs later, roughly, I find a pretty nice small charm, 22 life. Now on run 494, I find Reaper's Toll of Nihlathak. Unfortunately, it's not F, but it's still an amazing find. And 2 runs later, I find pretty awesome small charm of Pindleskin. It's 7 magic find plus some fire resistances. So at this point, I'm halfway into the runs, and so far the most notable drops have been a Rune and a Tal's amulet. So suffice to say, I wasn't exactly thrilled about how these runs were going, but you know, I decided to pull it through, so I kind of just had to continue. Anyway, it does get better on in the second half of the runs, and the first drop in the second half is Bart Tux at 517 runs. Then 4 runs later, I find an amazing large charm with some life and resistances. Then 2 runs later, I find a Natalia's helm. The roll isn't too good, but it's kind of okay. 550 roughly runs in, I find Ethereal Thunderstroke. And 2 runs later, I actually cross off another item off my Holy Grail list. It's a legendary mallet. Unfortunately, it's not the rarer one, the Schaefer's, I believe. It's the Stone Crusher. And 20 runs later, I find another unique amulet of a random mob. Unfortunately, again, it doesn't roll anything good. It's Nokazat. Now, 585 runs in, I find Trang-Ul's Belt. And I also find 2 more of them at run 787 as well as 871st. And 606 runs in, I find another pretty damn GG item, which is my second Telrash's armor. So in 600 runs, essentially in 600 Pindleskin runs, I found 2 Telrash's armors, which is pretty cool. 618 runs in, I find an Umrun. The next 100 runs I actually do live on stream, and actually quite a few of awesome items drop. So I kick off the stream like 10 runs in, perhaps, I drop an Immortal King's Armor of Pindle. Then like 8 runs later, I drop Maras of a random mob. The roll is whatever, but it's still, a Maras. 5 runs later, I actually drop a unique buckler from Pindle, which might seem like a trashy item, but it's since it's DC free, it's extremely hard to find in such, late game areas. And then the next run, I actually find a unique Shadow Plate. It's not that good, but it's still pretty rare. And then 30 runs later, probably one of the best drops out of these entire 1000 runs happens, and it's actually a unique giant skull, so another item off my holy grail list. Feels amazing, man. And 10 runs later, I actually reached level 95, which isn't exactly a drop, but reaching level 95 on hardcore and while doing Nihlathak, I mean, that's pretty awesome. That really feels awesome. 3 runs later, I cross off another item of my holy grail list, so it's my second item in the same stream in 100 runs. It's the Demon Crossbow Gut Siphon. As I continue my runs on stream, I almost die, so that would have been embarrassing, but luckily I kind of survived because my, setup is pretty damn awesome. Anyway, where was I? So 710 runs in, another unique amulet drops off Nihlathak, and yet again it's a freaking Nokazans. But 30 runs later, Nihlathak actually drops a facet, and it's cold. So 50 runs later, I drop another unique piece of jewelry off Nihlathak, so that's like 3 in a row by now. It's Ravenfrost, not too good of a roll, but Ravenfrosts are awesome, so whatever. 50 runs later, I cross off another item off my holy grail list, and it's the Valkyrie's Winged Helm. 811 runs in, I drop Titans of Pindleskin, and the following run, I drop a pretty nice small charm from Nihlathak, Life and Resistances, as well as an rune from a random mob. Now, 850 runs in, I find an F-Fresher from a random mob. Unfortunately, it rolls only 1 socket. It seems like I wasn't too lucky with the rolls this entire time. Anyway, 882 runs in, I find Medusa's Gaze Ethereal. It's not my first one, but it's still a really rare item. 3 runs later, I find another shield, which is lidless. I mean, it's not that rare, but it's only the first one I found in 1k run, so I thought I'd mention it. 930 runs in, I find 2 rings, 1 rare, 1 unique. The rare one is kind of okay, 10 FCR, some resistances and damage reduced, but the unique one is especially important because it's another item off my holy grail list, and it's Carrion Wind. 7 runs later, I find Natalia's Armor of a random mob. I think the roll is horrific. But 15 runs later, I find Gladiator's Bane of Nihlathak. 8 runs later, I find another, rare ring. God dang it. At least it's a good one. It's, not Manald or Nagel ring. Anyway, 987 runs in, I find Nosferatus of a random mob. And my very last GG drop happens 993 runs in from Nihlathak.
Nope.
And this last drop really summed things up how I kind of felt doing these 1000 Nihlathak runs. It was just overall a pretty damn horrible experience. Even though I got some amazing items, most notable items would probably be Sir Rune, Giant Skull, Double Telrash's Armor, Telrash's Amulet, Stone Crusher, Maras Ormus, Immortal King's Armor, and Carrion Wind. These are amazing items, don't get me wrong, but experience. After all, I did 1000 runs, so I'm kind of torn apart about this. Anyway, that's it for the GG drops. I've showed you really everything I got. So if that's the only thing you came to this video for, I thank you for watching. Have a lovely day. But if you came for this video to listen to my, sweet and lovely and sexy voice, I can already imagine how everyone is unsubscribing. But anyway, there's a couple of things I wanted to say before I finish this video off. So first of all, how I did these runs. I was running Nihlathak on players free. I think that's pretty much the sweet spot, especially for hardcore. Like being on a higher player count can easily mean your death, just because monsters' health goes up, so corpse explosion deals more damage, and just overall monsters' damage increase with player count. As well as players free, like any higher player setting than free, really suffers from diminishing returns, in terms of decreasing the no drop chances. So in most cases, players free is the sweet spot. And I was also running 222 MF. You can easily bump that up if you're playing softcore, but for hardcore running Nihlathak, I mean, it's one of the most dangerous areas in the game. So I don't think you can go much above, a couple of hundreds of MF. I would really love to have 300 MF. That's kind of, again, the sweet spot where the diminishing returns of Magic Find really kick in. But unfortunately, I just didn't have perhaps good enough gear. Perhaps I'm not even sure how I could make my gear better to bump my MF up to all the way to 300. In those 1000 runs, I also got 122 destruction keys, which is a shit ton. And when you think about it, I'll probably need to make the same video for, running counters and summoner now, which is gonna be a pain in the ass since they can't really drop any items I need. It's just for keys, which, oh dear god. Anyway, yeah, so as far as keys goes, I was getting them at around 12% rate, which is slightly below average. In theory, on players free, it should be getting one key every 9.6 runs, so a couple of percents below average, but that's really whatever. And the first thing is experience gained. So my runs usually last in about a minute and a half. For softcore, you can definitely bump that number up to, maybe half a minute, especially if you have the waypoint, if you're not farming Pindle. But for hardcore, and especially if you're running Pindle, like a minute and a half is probably the very limit you can go for. And in a single run, I would get around 160k experience. So roughly that equals to 100,000 experience per minute. Now, I did a rough comparison to running Chaos Sanctuary, and I was getting there around 130k experience per minute. So, roughly speaking, Chaos Sanctuary is 30% more efficient than Nihlathak. So, that combined with, pretty lousy drops, the huge no drop chance on Nihlathak, and how dangerous running this area is, I just don't see how running Nihlathak makes any sense unless you're, I don't know, sadistic as I am, masochistic, or really hate your life, which I don't, but I mean, somebody has to do the video, so I kind of volunteered, I suppose. Yeah, I think that's it for my closing thoughts. So, to sum everything up, a couple of really great drops, but overall very negative experience. I would never recommend running Nihlathak on hardcore to anyone, except for Extimus maybe, but scratch that. Anyway, so yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed watching my video. Please do leave a comment if you have any suggestions, because I'll probably make a couple similar videos, perhaps running 1000 times Countess, perhaps Summoner, perhaps Travancore, I don't know. So if you have any suggestions as to where I could improve in such videos, please do let me know. Any feedback is always much appreciated. And once again, I thank you guys for watching. Have a lovely day, and hopefully see you guys in my next video. Cheers!